Welcome to this run through of Anxiety Wizard. It's almost like an unboxing in a sense. I often get questions, well, what's in Anxiety Wizard? How will it help me? Why is it something that's going to be useful to me? And I'd like to just give you a run through of the kinds of things which are in Anxiety Wizard. But also, I'd like to talk a little bit about self-help CBT, because one of the ways that self-help CBT is so powerful is that I've accessed many of the common processes that are in virtually every psychological problem. Things like, for instance, and if you can identify any of these as being something that, are potentially a problem for you, then Anxiety Wizard might be something that you would find useful. Self-critical. Are you self-critical? Do you worry? Do you tend to be a bit of a perfectionist? Do you have high standards? Do you feel that you don't have enough control, or do you want to have more emotional control? Do you tend to avoid some things which might be difficult? And do you feel like somehow you're not achieving what you need to achieve, but you also feel that you might be failing, and you might feel like a failure, or you might feel that you're not good enough? So if these things kind of make some sense to you, then Anxiety Wizard will tackle these. And so let me just introduce Anxiety Wizard to you. Now, Anxiety Wizard is a program, an online CBT, self-help CBT program that has it has 15 modules. It starts off with 3 introductory modules. So the first one here, we have how to use Anxiety Wizard, and how to gain the tools that you would find you'd learn if you had face-to-face therapy with a CBT therapist, for instance. And then we move into module 1, which is an introductory module, and it's called What is Anxiety? And this introduces the concept of the 5 doors of anxiety. The first door is the need for control. If you're anxious, you strive to have control, but you never feel that you have adequate control. If you're anxious, you probably use the tool of worry. You probably use excessive worry. You catastrophize, which basically means it's the worst it could possibly be, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're avoiding things, which actually doesn't help, and you quite likely have an over focus on physical symptoms. Now, these are the 5 doors that typically lead to anxiety. Now, not everybody goes through all 5 of the doors, although some do, but I'm fairly sure that you've been through some of those doors. And so at the end of this module, we start to work on closing those doors. And the thing about doors, of course, you can go through a door one way, you can come back through a different way. And then we move on to the worry module. Now, the worry module is very powerful. The reason being that virtually everyone who has a psychological problem worries. Now, worry is, in essence, and you'll find this as you go through the program, but in essence, you're asking your brain to solve a problem that does not have an answer. And that is why you consistently worry. And so that's a process. And of course, throughout self-help CBT, we recognize that we have to work on the process that creates the problem. Worry is not the problem. Well, worry is not the problem. Let's say it's a process that causes the problem of being preoccupied, your mind constantly being active, you're not being able to relax or to rest. So we have to target the problem, which is the program that creates worry. And so there are some great tools. We use the stop exercise, we use worry time, let the worry fly by, and real problem solving as opposed to worrying. Then we move on to module 1, and module 1 is the Panic Pit Stop module 1. A previous program was Panic Pit Stop. Now, panic is the pinnacle of anxiety. And so if we solve panic, we also solve anxiety. And so we're into the module 1, the Panic Pit Stop, starting the word in panic, and it's understanding the way that anxiety works and understanding why anxiety ramps up and ramps up and ramps up, and what's happening in your brain to do that. So we also start to introduce a couple of cases, the first one being Jeff and Jade, because they struggle with panic, and they become cases that we can use, we can learn from their experience. We then move on to managing your threat level. Now, if you struggle with anxiety, you always have a threat level. You may or may not be aware of it, but if, for instance, if you're just kind of feeling unsettled, if you're feeling some physical symptoms, that's indicative of a threat level. And when your threat level gets very high, then you have panic. But if your threat level remains sort of moderate, what you just end up having is chronic anxiety, chronic physical symptoms, chronic stomach upset. Just not very nice at all. So we want to learn to manage the threat level. And that's what we do in Module 2. Then we move on to mini Module 1. Now, a lot of people who have panic experiences have questions. For instance, will I faint if I have a panic attack? If I get hot, will I faint? Why do my hands shake? Is my breathing a problem? Why am I dizzy or have blurred vision? And these are questions which are commonly asked, and this mini module, answers those questions for you. We then move on to Module 3. Now, there are 3 things that you pretty much always do if you're struggling with panic and anxiety. And this module introduces what's called the whirlpool of emotions. It introduces the idea that your emotions can, in a sense, become on automatic pilot and they can just take over. So the 3 things that really you have to do if you want to keep having anxiety, right? You do these to keep having anxiety, and I know you don't want to, but you do. It's avoiding tackling the problem in all sorts of ways. So for instance, if you had some social anxiety, you'd avoid going out. You'd avoid talking to people. You'd avoid meetings. That kind of thing. The second one is that we're always prone, human beings are very prone to catastrophic interpretations of physical symptoms. So that would lead to health anxiety. I feel like I've got a cold, perhaps I've got coronavirus. And the third one is that we are very, very prone to using negative thought processes, to being self-critical, to being down on ourselves, being down on the world, being down on everything, just being very, very negative. The trouble is, we do this repetitively and over a long period of time, and we tend not to learn from experience. And this module will address that. Now, it's very hard. In fact, I would say it's impossible to have a panic attack unless your breathing is dysregulated. And so in mini module 2, we're learning how to breathe better. Typically, panic is very, very commonly associated with hyperventilation. So we learn how to breathe properly. And we also learn how to relax. If you were to say, yeah, I'm always tense, I'm on edge, it's hard to do things because I can't settle, I can't relax, and this module will teach you how to relax. Now, there are basically 2 realities if we think of it like this. One reality is external reality, which is the world in which you live, and the second reality is in here, it's internal reality. And internal reality is the place where your anxiety, your depression, your panic, whatever problem it is created. And so this module starts to deal with the powerful imagination that's creating the problems that you have, and also learning to finish off the work with being self-critical and to accept more of who you are and more of what you do as being just a normal part of being a human being. So acceptance and recognizing that your imagination is actually creating the problems that you have is a very powerful combination in Module 4. We also start to introduce the idea that your brain takes shortcuts because it doesn't want to waste energy. And a lot of times those shortcuts are wrong. And this is a very, very common problem that creates depression. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this idea, but you feel like you're tingling, you feel like you're buzzing with energy, you feel really hyper, you feel like you're really alert, you just can't settle. That's because you're high, in a sense, on nervous energy. In mini module 3, called Grounding the Energy, I teach you a powerful tool called Emotional Freedom Technique, and I teach you some tools to ground yourself, to take that charge out of your body, to reduce that powerful sense of electricity, and then you can relax and you can be calm. Now, we move on to Module 5. Module 5 is introducing tools that you can use if you struggle with depression. Now, I think I've said that anxiety and depression very commonly go together, and this module will start to help you to feel like you have some control over low mood. And we'll also be introducing the idea that perfectionism is a poor strategy for life. We'll be introducing the idea that if we focus on processes rather than outcomes, we get much more mileage for the energy we put into things. Stress is very, very commonly associated with focusing on outcomes. and trying not to feel like a failure, trying not to get found out. These are all invalid thought processes, really. And if you said, or if you believed that you would like to have more emotional control, this module, which is very powerful in itself, will teach you how to have power, emotional power and control. And it always works because it's just true. Now, sleep is incredibly important. If you're sleeping fine, you don't even think about it. But if you're not sleeping fine, it becomes a huge focus of your life. And so this module, mini module 4, is entirely focused on sleep. And it gives you a number of tools which are very powerful, and I swear that people swear by these tools. They're EMDR audios, which are a special kind of audio, and people say that it enables them to get an extra couple of hours of sleep. It reduces the anxiety when they're awake, which is why they were designed in the first instance, and it helps the quality of their sleep. Now, if your sleep is better, virtually every problem that you have is diminished. And so we move on to module 6. Now, a lot of times we fall into the habit of just doing what we always do, okay? And a lot of times anxiety, depression and panic are simply habits. And so we address these sort of conditioned processes, if you like, in module 6. But we also start to deal with what's called the inner critic. Now, if you're critical, you have an inner critic. And that inner critic basically criticizes you. And when that happens, it feels as if you're losing confidence in yourself as a person. And this module addresses that issue. Now, a very modern take on treating anxiety, panic, depression, etc. is mindfulness. Now, I've developed a version of mindfulness that I call active mindfulness, based upon my own work many years ago when I was very focused on being mindful, long before it became fashionable. And I will demonstrate to you the power of being mindless and also the power of being mindful, and then you'll be able to use the tools. A lot of these are audios. You'll be able to use these tools in your everyday life. Now, in mini module 4, we're going to give you some power tools that drill into the anxiety to enable you to distance yourself from anxiety-provoking situations internally, but also distance yourself from anxiety-provoking situations externally, with 3 steps back to see the big picture. And these are powerful little tools, and the benefit of these is that you can take them everywhere and use them wherever you are. And then we come to the last module, which is mini module 5, and this sets you up to be able to carry on progressing and developing as you go on with the rest of your life. And so we talk about why you fail to learn from experience and how you can change your experience so that in fact every day you're more in control. And we also talk about how to continue to boost your sense of self-esteem and your sense of value. So there are in Anxiety Wizard approximately 150, I'm always putting new things in, so 153 elements. Now, Anxiety Wizard is without question the largest, well, it's the only self-help CBT program in the world, but it's the largest self-help CBT program because it is so comprehensive. It takes you everywhere from beginning right the way through to the end of a professional and research-based and evidence-based CBT for anxiety. It was devised and developed by me, and I've worked with hundreds upon hundreds of clients to resolve panic, anxiety, depression, and stress. So, Anxiety Wizard is a self-help CBT program that gives you everything that you need. All you need to do, literally, is just to work through the elements. Now, I would generally say 10 to 15 minutes a day for about 8 to 10 weeks, and you'll have anxiety cracked. And it's quite possible for you to go from severe anxiety to a cured state, from panic to not having panic, from depression to feeling good, feeling in charge, I'm feeling in control. All you have to do is follow the roadmap inside Anxiety Wizard, follow the program a little bit every day, and you'll have this cracked. I hope you found this interesting, and I hope to see you on the inside of Anxiety Wizard. The thing is, you can take control of these processes or not. These processes are created by your brain. They are damaging and disruptive, and they spoil the quality of your life. If you take control over them, you have the opportunity to change them and to get back quality of life, which is a huge a hugely valuable thing. If you don't take control of them, they won't change because there's no reason why they would, because there's no pressure on them to change. So self-help CBT is about learning to have a different kind of relationship with your brain, really, and actually a better relationship. And I think that's an entirely worthwhile enterprise. So I look forward to seeing you on the inside of Anxiety Wizard.